Hey everybody, Doc here. Put together a little tips and tricks tutorial for you if you're interested in building the Salvino's JR models Roadrunner, commonly run from 1971 to 1973 in NASCAR. A little bit later than that if you get into some of the USAC cars. I applaud Salvino's for making this model. Pretty hard to get your hands on the original MPC issue. Pretty pricey if you can find one. So this really opens the doors to being able to build a lot of the Roadrunners from the early 70s. So other than a lot of the petty kits that Salvino's has released, you can find aftermarket decals and build some of the other really cool cars. So some tips and tricks that I've encountered now that I've built two of them. Hopefully this will help you. First of all, the chassis length. Per the instructions, you can see that they're suggesting to insert the back clip into the chassis using the second hole, and that's appropriate. However, when I built my first one using that method, I thought that the rear tire was a little bit snug, and so when I went to build my second one, I thought sure it'd be nice to cheat that a little bit. So I actually drilled out the second hole using an 093 drill bit. And then when I put the rear clip on, I cheated that pin to the forward position just to close that wheelbase up a little bit. And the result turned out pretty good for me, I think. So you can see on the Fred Lorenzen 99 car, the wheelbase seems a little more appropriate. So that's one tip that you might want to consider. Another biggie was to really clear out the drive shaft tunnel. The drive shaft box stock would fit really tight in there, and from an elevation standpoint, to go from the rear gear to the uh, transmission, you need to have a little bit of ability to move that. So I just used my Dremel and just shaved a little bit of clearance off of the drive shaft tunnel. I think that will save you a headache later on. Generally speaking, about this kit, I think everyone knows now that some of the tolerances here were designed line to line. So after shrink, that there's some collisions. So just use a file, sand it down, test fit things, get them to fit before you glue them together. And one of those that I found is towards the engine bay. The front clip is rather bendable, so you want to make sure that it's not bent down too far. It's going to ruin your stance, or up too far. So make sure that the front clip is in the right position, and then when you put the engine bay roll cage on and you get it tight down, you'll notice that there's actually a gap. And so just from a, I guess, exactness standpoint, I went ahead and put in some 040 by 060 styrene to fill that gap and give some real good sort of glue surfaces there to make it nice and strong and sturdy. And I did this before. Well, I don't know if I did this one before painting, but I could have. Very important. If you build the Salvino's JR early 70 Charger, the hood has clearance. So when you put the crossover pipe between the valve covers, there's room for the breathers. Um, and it's not a problem. But on the Roadrunner, it's a huge problem. That'll be a collision with the flatter hood. So when you mount the crossover pipe, just right here, bend it down a little bit, and then when you put your breathers on, you can level those back up. But that will get that below any possible collision with the hood. So, again, very important. I did learn this one the hard way. I learned this the hard way too. So, the kit includes multiple exhaust, and you definitely want to use the equally spaced headers for the Roadrunner, not the 358 non-Hemi exhaust. It will collide with the frame of the Roadrunner and sit way low, and you'll have to rip it out. Again, I learned the hard way. So when you do get towards finishing the kit, this one assembles a little different than the Charger. You actually have to kind of put the nose in first. And so you can probably appreciate any extra space. But these wheels come in quite a bit from the fender wheel wells. There's actually a collision with the tie rod, and if you use the metal axle on the rear end, there's a similar extra bit of space. So what I did is, I actually don't love the metal rod axles anyway. I don't need it to roll on my shelf. So I substituted that with some 062 styrene rod and cut it to a length that's about 3/8 longer than the rear end housing, so that there's 3/16 sticking out each side. And that way I was able to space out the wheels. So I bought some evergreen tubing, and I sawed them at about 0.07 long, glued them to the back of the wheel hubs to create a standalone wheel. Didn't glue it to the axle yet, but you're welcome to dry fit it. And when you do, you'll notice that the 062 axle rod will go into the wheel, and it'll end flush. So eventually, when you put the wheel together, there won't be a collision there. And on the front end, you can change out the pins if you want, or go back, or you can figure out a way how to make a 080 front pin fit into this 100 ID from the evergreen tube and make that work as well. But in any case, when I did that, you can see that I tightened up the gap in the wheel well, and by far no collision between the tie rod and the wheel itself. Really happy on the rear end. If you see how far we closed up the gap on that one. Final issue that I really want to point out to you is that if you use the kit window net or an aftermarket window net, just pay attention to how far forward you mount it and whether you mount it to the roll cage on the inside or the outside, because there could be a collision with the body molding trim. I mounted mine to the inside. These cars, the nets kind of were fixed at the top and they rolled upward, so they were kind of a strap system to the roll cage below. So I just that's how I did it, so there was no collision. And then an advanced idea if you're interested, but I like the kits to sit on the shelf and be able to sort of pick them up. And so I added these tabs using some 060 by 100 styrene to just help keep the body in place. So by adding these tabs, once you do put it all together, and again, the Roadrunner will assemble by tucking the nose down first. It's kind of opposite of a lot of kits. And you just pry the body apart and have these tabs fit underneath and hold the body secure. So those are my tips and tricks for building the Salvino's GR model Roadrunner. It's you can really make it look good and build a lot of different cars. So highly recommend it. Have fun, everybody.